2020 has been a wild year, from the worldwide pandemic to perhaps the most heated political debates ever seen. But in today's video, we'll be taking a look at the most controversial speakers of 2020. Let's get straight into the video. Number 1. Ben Shapiro. Although well respected, Ben Shapiro has had his fair share of media coverage in 2020. He's had some quite controversial opinions that made some headlines. For example, he was called racist by a congresswoman, and this is how he reacted.
Mr. Shapiro, you talked about white privilege, and just this week, I had a conversation with Rachel Lazar, who's done some work, a Jewish American woman who's done some work on this area, as well as having extensive conversations with Dr. Greg Parks of Wake Forest University, who's also talked quite a bit about critical race theory. And it's my understanding that white privilege is not telling individuals that they cannot speak, but it is a term for societal privilege.
Shapiro doesn't take it lightly that he was just called a racist, so he quickly responds to the argument and sets down his point of view. So take a look for yourself.
All the time is, if you want to cite instances of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I'm more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But when you just say that there is a white privilege out there in the ether and that by dint of birth your skin color generates for you an advantage, what you're really saying to people is that your view is less valuable because you have not experienced what I've experienced. And that is an identity argument, that's a character argument, that's not a rational political argument that can actually be taken on in any way. It's more of a cudgel and a club than it is.
Number 2. Jordan Peterson. Just like Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson is well respected but has also had some quite controversial takes. For example, in a recent interview he stated that Donald J. Trump would win the election.
There are so many people outside of the higher structures of society that no one is talking to. That's where Mr. Trump comes in.
Yeah.
And more power to him for that matter.
Yeah.
He is talking and listening. I know that's another absolute heresy. He is not the cause of these things. He's the result of failures of other and more sophisticated people.
Well, and I think I have a friend who's working very closely with the Democratic Party in the United States and has been quite effective at doing so and trying to move the party closer to the middle and away from the radicals. And
he says that the opposing parties and all other parties have failed to bring a candidate that is better than Donald Trump, and that this is the reason as to why the 2020 election will be won by Trump.
We discussed this a lot because, you know, I think one of the reasons that the people who hate the Democrats in the United States truly hate them, right? That there's just vitriol there, is because they've proved themselves incapable of generating a candidate who can actually take on Trump.
Yeah.
And I think there's a disappointment even among the enemies of the Democrats that's so profound there that it generates precisely this vitriol. It's like the man is characterized by man.
Number 3. Donald Trump. Donald Trump has perhaps been the most influential and controversial person of the year. Because of his massive influence, almost everything he says can and will be taken as factual. And when he suggested that injecting disinfectant into your body could cure the coronavirus, people actually tried it.
Where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. The new headline is Trump asks people to go outside. That's dangerous. Here we go. Same old group.
Trump later claimed that this was all sarcastic and an attempt to lure in reporters. What he failed to realize, however, is that people actually tried doing this and ended up dying. Here's the clip of him denying it.
Your comments about injections of disinfectant, they're quite...
No, I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you, just to see what would happen. Now, disinfectant for doing this, maybe on the hands, would work. And I was asking the question of the gentleman who was there yesterday, Bill, because when they say that something will last 3 or 4 hours or 6 hours, but if the sun is out or if they use disinfectant, it goes away in less than a minute. Did you hear about this yesterday?
Number 4. Joe Biden. Here at the Money Frenzy channel, we like to stay equal and compare both sides. So although Trump has some controversial moments, so too did the former Vice President Joe Biden. In an interview, he said some quite controversial things about the African American community.
Presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden is apologizing for something he said about African Americans at a virtual conference for Black and Hispanic journalists. Ed O'Keefe is covering campaign 2020. Ed, what did Biden say?
Well, good morning, Jeff. The comments came in an interview that lasted almost an hour. He was asked about immigration and how he would engage with Cuba. Here's some of what he had to say.
What you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different.
As you can probably tell, the black community and just the vast majority of people in general found this comment to be degrading and defamatory towards the black community. And later, Biden had to set the record straight on Twitter.
Different attitudes about different things. You go to Florida, you find a very different attitude about immigration in certain places than you do when you're in Arizona.
Late last night, Biden clarified the comment, tweeting, "In no way did I mean to suggest the African American community is a monolith. Not by identity, not on issues, not at all." President Trump had jumped all over the comments, calling them an insult to African Americans. And in a separate attack during his visit to Ohio, the president also took...
Number 5. Steven Crowder. Hilarious to some, controversial to others, Steven Crowder is known to stir up conflict. He is obviously not the biggest fan of Donald Trump, and when he hilariously mocked him on his YouTube channel, some people weren't very happy.
I can't stop the things I see, the things she
Yes, he is dancing around in Native American costume while also dressing up as Donald Trump himself. His skit has a couple hundred dislikes, and I think I may be able to guess who they're from.
does don't seem real. Grab my phone just to hear, calling donors, drinking beer. I wish you would disappear. I can smell bullshit from here. The bitch is cringing.
So in conclusion, 2020 has been a year filled with controversial points of views and even more controversial political debates. From Donald Trump suggesting that injecting bleach into yourself is a good idea, to Steven Crowder's comedic take on Trump, 2020 doesn't seem to be slowing down. Anyways, that brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, leave us a like and subscribe for more content like this in your inbox. With that said, we hope to see you again in our next video.